Hey guys, what's up? Blue here. For those of you who don't know, I was at Dreamhack Atlanta for the Paladins and Smite World Championships. Got to see all the other games that went down there: Madden, fighting games, CS:GO, Halo, as well as some mobile game champions, and all the other cool things of Dreamhack. We're gonna have a lookbook with all the pictures and photos that I took and edited for that event. That'll be on the consolecorner.co website. But this video is the entire panel of the Rogue Company, the making of Rogue Company. So I have been given permission by the lead designer, Gandhi, to upload this video. I'm sorry it took so long. I tried to do it while we were at DreamHack, but there were a little bit of file issues using PC and Mac at the same time. So there were a lot of problems there. Plus, we're on the road, so limited with the gear that we were able to take. I was there for like half a week. A lot of luggage. But I will let you know that I had to use the restroom really badly before the panel, so I missed like the first 3 to 5 minutes, which was mainly the introduction and a little bit of talk about the weapons and such. So that information is missing from this video. This is unedited too, so it's all shot raw footage being brought to you. You'll notice there's like a hiccup at one point in the video when they're talking about the skyline and environment for the game. That's because it accidentally got paused while it was being recorded, so I had to. So let me know what you guys think about everything in the comments below, and they're going to be trying to get me some. I have alpha access already. They're going to be trying to get me extra keys, maybe to give away, out things like that. The closed alpha is coming very soon, hopefully in December sometime. So let me know what you guys think about Rogue Company so far.
That was kind of just it. The next piece was objective-based gameplay. We wanted the gameplay of Rogue Company to have strategy, to have elements in there to where there's simplistic depth. It's not overly complicated, but there's enough in there that you can really sink your teeth into and you can master. The final piece on this, I have another one after, is vibrant locations and exotic settings. We wanted to make sure that all of the gameplay wasn't dark and gritty like military, right? We see enough of that in the world and as well as just across games. We want it to be vibrant, flashy, more akin to something like the Fast and the Furious than it was Saving Private Ryan, right? Something that when you play, you have fun. The final element, which is something that we had from the very beginning as well, is that gunplay was king. So though, yes, we have mercenaries inside of our game, and yes, there are abilities and gadgets, the number one most important thing is that you die by the barrel of your gun. If you are better than someone else with a gun, you can still come out on top. So when we say built for crossplay, one of the things that we're looking for is to actually have the game be competitive between console and PC. So at the very beginning, it was all about controller tuning. Inside of there, we have friction, which is the slowdown when you're going over an enemy. We will actually reduce your sensitivity by a little bit. This is like the standard convention for controllers. We have aim rotation. What aim rotation does, it says that if an enemy is in your crosshair and they're just kind of moving a little bit, it will kind of help you kind of track them so you can stay on top of your target. And then the final one is aim acceleration. Aim acceleration is about how fast your controller will move when it reaches the outside. Kind of boring stuff, but it's important that we got it right from the very beginning because it's a core pillar. Now the pieces that were a little more tough was what we do with time to kill. Time to kill is one of the most sensitive subjects you can possibly have inside the shooter. And for us, we were like, well, we know if it goes too fast. Well, let's start with assumptions. Our presupposition was that if the time to kill is too fast, PC players are just going to dominate console. And there's not a whole lot of things we can do about that. And when we say too fast, it's really when you have weapons that can kill in 1 or 2 bullets very quickly, it kind of lends itself to being more peak advantage than it is about the dance. We wanted to have a nice ebb and flow. So we could look at this and say, okay, well, the best thing that we could do is just avoid fast. And that's completely incorrect. What we need to do is we need to test each and every single time to kill to see what actually felt right for Roko. Poor Joey has been a part of this for so long that there was like a period of a quarter, like 3 months, where I changed the time to kill every single day. Every day. Yeah, every single day. And the big key of that is just figuring out what felt right. And it's a lot of what spoke to Roko. And what we found out was that we needed to have enough mastery in our game, but we couldn't have it too fast and we couldn't have it too slow. The final piece is limited verticality. So the more verticality you have, the more wear and tear kind of puts on console players, right? Tracking with controller is very difficult, right? So if we have too much verticality, especially verticality that isn't telegraphed, what happens is players feel lost. They go, how did I die from behind me? And we had many maps before where you could be on top of rooftops and on the ground and stacked verticality, and it didn't go great for us. As soon as we play tested that, everyone was like, I just get killed from anywhere, and that's bad. Now, PC players didn't mind it, right? Because they could just drop in a little bit, but they still had the same issues. So we decided to go a different approach with it overall. So from ground up, built for crossplay was one of the most important aspects for us. The next piece. So obviously, Rogue Company, it's a tactical action shooter. What does a tactical action shooter even mean? We can get to that piece in the next slide, but one of the main things that we wanted to do with this game was we wanted to create a unique game mode. And so we came up with Extraction. Originally, Extraction took a lot of inspiration from the Battle Royale genre as a whole. We saw what Battle Royale was doing, and we saw a lot of great replayability from it. We said, okay, well, what makes Battle Royale as good as it is? And so we kind of built Extraction around three main pillars. You have replayability. The maps need to support a variety of objectives, right? So in a Battle Royale, the circle always moves. We know in a round-based game mode, you can't have too much random. It needs to be a controlled random. So we had to say, okay, well, there's only a limited amount of objectives that the players can actually interact with and where they're placed around the map. And that tested much better. Then we need player choice. Player choice is something that we feel very strongly with from the design perspective. We want players to be able to play the game they want the way they want. And the way that we can do that is from, well, the pacing of the game. The tactical action aspect comes from you can play very fast, you can play very slow. You can be methodical or you can be up in their face. And that is enabled through the merc selection as well as your just general play style overall. In addition to the player choice in selecting your merc, we also have an item shop. We'll talk about it later, but every merc has their own variant of an item shop that you can progress throughout the match. The final piece, which we have gone through so much, is the simplistic depth, which lends itself to strategy and teamwork. We know we are going to be round-based, one life, and objective-focused. So we needed to have objectives that supported that. And it's very easy for us to throw an objective out there and say, okay, well, just fight over it. You have one life, that's all that matters. Well, it's not the case. We needed it to be more interesting. We needed to create puzzles for our players to kind of grasp onto so they could say, okay, well, we know it's third person, and we know this guy's probably behind the box. How do I get out from that? How do I get them from that cover? How do I retake this objective? And I call that dynamic combat puzzles. So, dynamic play. We talked about it. Tactical action makes absolutely no sense when you put the two together. I know that. We all know this. So what does it mean? Well, the tactical action can come from the fact that it's round-based one life. That's one of it. The action elements can be its fluid movement, right? Very few third-person shooters out there allow you to have a free jump, free mantle, and you can toggle shoulders in their game. You have dodge roll, all melee weapons can be thrown. The action elements are all based on what you yourself want to do. So when we were designing the movement, it was like, okay, well, players are just going to be able to do whatever they want, right? Originally, way back, we actually had the ability for players to stand on swords that were in walls. And every day Joey complained to me. And he was like, I can't build levels like this, dude. I just don't know what to do. People can just get out of bounds with it. And I was like, it's fine. And then a year later, I had to pull it out. But, we got there, right? We kind of got there. So then when we're like, okay, well, we know what's tactical in action. We have round-based. How do we make it dynamic? How do we make every round feel different? If I play the same map 3 times in a row, how do I make that feel different? And it's through controlled random. So in a round-based game mode, we have one objective that spawns up every single round, but it's in one of 3 or 4 set locations. One of them might favor your team, one of them might favor the other team. And how you approach that is all of your choice. So I talked about dynamic combat puzzles a little bit. And so here's just a very small look of what you can see. So in this, the square, sorry, I'm not great at Photoshop, but I do enough. Juan's got me back on this. He's actually really good at it. Right here, the square shows where the objective is. So, and then the circles could be potential spots where people hide. This is where, when I was looking at kind of the gameplay, this is where most people kind of position themselves when this point spawns. And it's about how do you push through this. So one team will spawn on the other side of this objective where it's almost like 30 meters from them. The other team spawns all the way away. So they have to push into this objective. And so when you look at this, you go, okay, well, there's 4 spots they could potentially be, and the time's against us. How do we solve that? What's our way to get through that? And so every Merc brings something different to solve these puzzles. Whether it's flashbangs, whether it's a Merv launcher that Dima has to get people out from behind cover, or whether it's a defensive reinforcement that Anvil has, right? He sets up a barricade, and now the players have to deal with how do I get through this barricade? And so these puzzles exist in all of our maps, and Joey and the rest of the level design team has done an incredible job of catering to that. And it's something that we actually kind of started like 9 months ago, right? So it was a pretty strong pivot to go in this direction. So the Merc Designs. Merc's also, relatively new thing. For a long time we were going down this path of like create your own, but it was a little convoluted and it didn't really work out great. So the overall view of what Mercs are, a Merc is a character in a game that you get to play. Each Merc comes with one unique ability that you can use every single round. That's where they balance, right? So you're not going to have someone who pulls out a rocket launcher that does immediate damage. That's not an ability that's fun. I don't want that in my game. It should never exist in my game. So when I inevitably do this 2 years from now, you guys can just flip this and then do it. They also have a passive ability. The passive ability is something that can be triggered all the time, and it's something along the lines of you can reload while dodge roll. It's one of our favorite ones. It's on the character Lancer, and it plays well. So when we create these mercs, we have to say, what is their identity? And so a lot of that starts with the narrative. And so on Smite, we're able to leverage all of this rich lore that we already have. And we have to actually create all of that in Rogue Company. And Evelyn and the rest of the design team, we actually have a lot of people actually trying their hands now at short bio so we don't create unicorns, but mine's gonna be bad and you'll have to write it for me, but it's okay. We say, okay, what's the identity of this character? And then we go, well, what do they bring to the team? How do they solve the puzzle? Do they solve it or do they add complication? Or are they just a support? And 3 examples of that is Dima. We knew Dima was all about just explosives and being rambunctious across the map, right? It's like, okay, well, Dima could absolutely have a Merv launcher that fires a grenade that breaks out into other mini grenades and pushes people off from behind cover. That's a win, right? Trench, who's about reinforcements and being defensive, well, the name Trench kind of lends itself to playing a little bit slower and a little more methodical, right? And so he has a barbed wire grenade. And so he actually throws barbed wire and it sets up in a field around 9 meters that people cannot shoot, and they have to melee or destroy with a grenade. And then you have Dallas. Dallas is a guy who's from, a small town outside of Texas, right?
Right in Texas. I think it's Whitmore.
Whitmore. And so he's all about just tracking enemy players. So his ability will reveal the player who has the highest points on the enemy team for 5 seconds. So once we have all that, once we have the ability and then we have the passive, we go, all right, let's create the supporting kit. For Dallas, it was a layup, right? Well, he should have a lever action rifle. He should have a revolver. And you have those 2 elements, and then we go, well, it's about tracking. Let's give him sticky sensors, and then let's have him flashbangs because he kind of needs to support his team a little more. The final piece, which is what we were talking about for player choice, was the item shop. So inside of the game, you're accruing currency throughout all of it, and you're rewarded for individual performance, as well as winning or losing a round. We have a combat mechanic in there. We call it the blue shell effect. We'll skip that piece. But so inside of the game, you are able to make all these options that you're seeing on your screen. Round 1, you are not able to purchase a weapon, and that is by intent. If you lose, most likely you can't buy a weapon as well, and it creates a nice ebb and flow. Now the narrative is, can the team who lost round 1 win round 2? If not, they're down 2-0, and it's a first of 5. How do they respond to that? What is the way that you actually approach that? Do you spend money in a tactical, or do you just save again and pray to God you can win inside of the pistol round? We knew from the very beginning we didn't want it to be a punishing experience. So we said, okay, once you buy an item, you're going to have it forever. So if you buy a grenade and you die without using it, you're going to have it the next round. You will have it every single round from there. But then early on, we were like, well, you're not making any choices. What are you doing? If you get it, you're not doing anything. And so then we added upgrades. Upgrades just strictly make the weapon better, or the gadget, or, the melee weapon as well. So all of these weapons you can upgrade, and then it changes the way you play overall. And so as soon as we added that, that was kind of like the final piece that kind of completed the Roco experience. And now that is how we play the game currently, and that's long-term how we plan on keeping it as well.
Yes.
All right, now I'm going to hand this over to Joey, who will talk about the arenas of Road Company.
Good luck. No water. Cool. So somehow I snuck my way on to this, panel with a bunch of really talented people, and I'm, been here for a year. So if you're at this panel, you're probably interested in Road Company. If you're interested in Road Company, you're probably interested in shooters. So we're going to talk about the arenas of Road Company. That's all behind me. Levels for games are always made differently. Call of Duty levels are going to feel and play differently than something you see in CSGO or Battlefield. So for us, that meant, what do levels play like in Road Company? For a long time, as kind of mentioned, we had a bit more open feel to our levels, a bit more of that kind of battle royale-ish feel. And over time, we've started honing in on what it really meant for Road Company gameplay and what that meant for our levels. So here behind me is a few shots of a host of our maps, and they're in different vibrant locations. But really, what is level design, right? Like, what do I do for this team, and how do I help, and what do I do for the players? For me, it always starts with an idea. We're like, okay, we want to make this really cool map in the Panama Canal, and one of the ships are destroyed. So I take that idea and I run with it. I create really simple, geometric shapes, and I design the player pathing, right? Like from start to finish, when you fly into the map, where do you land? Where do you run forward? Where are the different arenas? Where are the objectives? Where are the choke points? Like these kind of things. What I have written here is level design is the process of creating level layouts through blockout geometry, being responsible for the player's experience within the level, and ensuring that each level meets unique goals established by the game. The big thing, as I was going into there, is that level design is a really iterative process. If you've seen the trailer for Road Company, you've seen the map that we call Canals. This is what it started as. It's really simple. We got to get in there fast, and we need to have people fly in and find interesting locations. Way earlier on, our maps were a lot bigger. You could actually play on both the side docks and on each of the boats and inside the boats. As a 4v4 game, we kind of ended up thinking, well, that's probably too much space, and you're spending a lot of dead time not really finding or shooting other players. It also meant that you had no idea where people were coming from. You might just be standing in an arena and then get shot from anywhere. So it takes a lot of time to kind of hone in on what are the interesting places in the map and how to get that feel just right. So this is a bit closer to the final version of Canals. We cut out the side docks. We're like, okay, that's too much space, so let's hone in on these gameplay arenas. You fly in, there's different arenas and stuff. This is actually pretty different than if you play it today. If you play Canals, it's pretty different. And eventually, this is what it looks like now. So you can kind of see throughout this process, which takes quite a while and goes through a lot of different iterations, the map can be very different from start to finish. So kind of circling back to levels made for Road Company, right? What does that mean to us on the team? A big thing is playstyle variety. Gandhi was kind of mentioning it earlier too, and Evelyn was as well. Everyone kind of plays shooters their own way. You might be more of a run and gun, or you might be more of a hunker down in a location and defend. You might even be more of a supportive type player. So it's really important for us that the maps that we're making are playgrounds for our mercenaries, and therefore playgrounds for your playstyles. Another thing that we touched on is action tactical. What does that mean? Tactical games are generally more like, I'm going to take this corner and then I'm going to watch this very specific sideline. Action games are more, I'm going to run around and do crazy things. And what we're trying to do is find a really interesting balance between the two. We don't want to be, a pixel hunter, but we also want the game to be really engaging and for you to do exciting different things. Found a pretty good balance, I think. So, a big part of that will come down to the engaging arenas. Gandhi was talking about earlier was extraction, and so different areas in the map, which I probably could have highlighted on this picture, there's different choke points like, actually if I go into things, but anyways. Readability is really important as well to us. Again, it's just that thing where if you played recent shooters right now, there's some readability issues in a lot of games. You know, you're running through a street and you're like, well, I can get shot from 20 different locations. Where am I supposed to focus? You know, where exactly am I supposed to go next? It's that sort of stuff where we're trying to keep combat in a frame, and then keep checkdowns simpler rather than super complex. In general, our gameplay is fairly competitive, but approachable. And then another thing that I was just going to mention real fast is that as a third-person game, it is important for us through level design to kind of address peeking. If we were just a corridor shooter, then you could just sit on the corner and you could watch the alleyway and the other players wouldn't be able to push at all. So we're trying to make sure that cover has, you know, enough tactical advantages and disadvantages so that you can have those combat puzzles and play around each other. We find that really important. So with playstyle variety, you might be the run and gun, you might be the sniper, you might be the person who's playing with your team, defender, explosive. Just going to have a couple examples of what that means for our maps, especially Canals. So this is the warship from Canals. And you know, if you're pushing into this objective, it's, you know, how do you take this location? What do you do here? If you're Dima, you can you know, use your Molotov or your explosive weapon and, you know, push really hard on the left side. But if you're more of the run and gun type, you can use free runner to push really hard and quickly and, you know, take the mantle route. It's a bit more risky, but you can get there faster and surprise the enemy. And then another example would be this location on cargo ship. With a wide variety of different mercenaries, we definitely want you to be able to, you know, find the mercenary that fits your playstyle and then be able to take advantage of what you're doing every match. The defender character on the left, Trench, he has barbed wire grenades, so this is a more open arena, so it's a really important where to be able to kind of like lock people down or prevent people from pushing. You have the barbed wire grenade, you can place it at a few of the choke points. I thought maybe I have a pointer, but I don't, so I can't really point. The giant door to the right, but also the door in the back. You know, there's a lot of locations where barbed wire is like really useful in this spot in particular. And then our combat medic on the right can revive people, so he would want to sit back a bit further, you know, keep eyes on his teammates. That is pretty much it for me. Kept it pretty short. But you know, the big thing for me is that level design is only part of the process. We love environment art. You know, it's what you're looking at most of the time as a player. It's what, you know, it's creating the beautiful scene and stuff like that. So I'm gonna pass it off to Christian.
Joey, can I ask you a quick question? When you're making a level, what do you think about camping? Does that cross your mind?
Okay. Do you guys want to answer that? Or want to wait to the Q&A?
Sure.
Let's go ahead.
It's gonna take it 4 years to make.
I'm done. Okay. Does this one work? Can you hear me? I mean, yeah, we definitely are looking at camping, right? That's part of the. As a third-person game, you can look over your shoulder, right? You can see around corners, and that's why we are trying to build out locations that have a diversity of cover and spots, not just corridors. Because camping, if it was corridors, would be really easy in a third-person game. So it's, you know, something that we're definitely taking a look at, and we're trying to be very careful with. We're trying to make it so that, again, it's not pixel hunting, so that you're not like, there's one spot in this entire arena that I have to watch at all times. But we wanted enough opportunities for all play types to, you know, have an opportunity. So someone who has a shotgun, maybe there's like, you know, small places for them, that kind of stuff.
I'll bug you later.
Cool. Yeah. Spots that are abused, we almost remove immediately, and it's me who abuses them.
Right.
He abuses them. Just recently, we had a play test. We got a great spot. I killed Kevin, who just walked in. It was awesome, and then they removed it. So
It was gone in 10 minutes.
that's my life.
I would move them too. I'm the artist, so I get to choose where they are. I want to say thank you guys for coming for this. This is a great opportunity. So I'm the lead environment artist. I am pretty much responsible for most of the visuals that you see on the screen. And I kind of have this vague description online that I found online. It's basically what the characters live in. It's the environment. So here's an image. Here's a screenshot from inside of our game. And excuse me for my voice. It's a little shot from the web. What's up? Oh, okay. All right. Good. So here's a screenshot of one of our maps that Scott Zier over here also helped design. He's sitting in the audience. So I was responsible for a visual pass on making all these rocks look nice and organic. So here's a screenshot of our game with no environment art. Oh my gosh.
Well, that's a total.
It's pretty much 90%. The other 10% is the character, which I guess is kind of important, but you know, whatever. And then some of the UI when we have, basically your guns and your radar and the timer. I guess that's important too. So I guess we're all like living harmoniously together. For anyone who's not aware of how games are made, this is like your first panel talk or whatever. Environments are made up of assets, or props is what we call them, and it's composed of thousands of different objects that are rocks, pillars, architecture, crates. I think every game in the last 20 years has a crate, so usually that goes to the junior artist. That's kind of like your rite of passage, is to make a high quality sci-fi crate. And so here's kind of a scene of some of the assets that make this scene. So our artists are responsible for composing the scene, making sure that it looks good, but it also has to adhere to gameplay design's blockout. So the maps that you saw that Joey had, he had all these like kind of big white boxes. We call those a gray box. And once he's done with that, once the map has been approved from gameplay, it comes over to us, and then we do the art pass on it. Here are some other assets that are made by an artist named Dylan Somerville. I think he's in the audience. So there he is. Yeah. There you go. Basically, these are all a big prop list that he made that we will make for all of our future maps, including the maps that we have now. And one thing that we work really heavy with design about is making sure that things meet to metric. Because this is a tactical, very competitive shooter, we want to make sure that when players are playing our game, that assets or things in the environment do not obstruct gameplay. I don't know how many games I've played where you thought you could shoot through something, or you thought that you could shoot around something or jump over, and you actually couldn't do it. A lot of people get kind of angry with invisible walls, and so we're responsible for making sure that everything is crystal clear. I'm a big gamer. I like to play a lot of competitive shooters, and I've been called an honorary designer, whatever that means, because I'm in the playtests a lot and making sure that our art doesn't screw things up. Here's the team. Environment artists. There's a few other people, but this is the people who really work hard to make sure that they make these maps awesome for you guys. So like I kind of briefly mentioned that environment art has to work in tandem with design. So we're usually one of the last processes into game development. And so we have a bunch of goals, and then they have a bunch of goals, and basically we dance for 6 months on a map. To making sure that both parties are happy. On the left, you'll see that what our art goals. We want to create believable spaces, exciting locations, and we have to keep with like real world objects, the real world scale. This is a realistic game, and so we have to make sure that we make this game as believable as possible for our players, so that it feels very immersive. And to the right, you have design goals. They really don't care what the art looks like half the time, but they want to make sure that their design aspects are met. This is kind of our process right now into how do we make a map. We start with a big theme, and we all get in a room and we pitch ideas like what would be a great a map for us to make. Location, what is the story, what time, like what year is it, what's the emotion or mood that we want to convey into our scenes. Scott Gandhi briefly talked about how we're strictly trying not to be what other shooters are, which is, if you have COD, which is, war torn. If you have Battlefield, also war torn. Apex is sci-fi a little bit, alternate reality. So we really want to create our own world and make sure that it's relatable and fun. So we would really make sure that our themes go to our style. Then it goes to block out, goes to the design team. They work on it for 2 months to make sure that a gameplay really for design really feels fun before any art, because we believe that design is really important. Then it goes to the concept phase. They sketch it out with in conjunction with the theme. We make sure that all the concept looks good, and then it comes to our 3D team, and then we work on all these. Here's just some kind of ideas for a brainstorm. Basically, we find some cool images online. We're like, okay, we really want to do these favelas. We really want to kind of do a different take. And then this is one of the maps that was previously made. We're like, okay, let's revamp it. And we just do a whole new art pass. So here's the block out that Joey worked on. Here's the concept phase. This is done by Wes Wheeler in conjunction with Will Burns. And they basically make what we call a Disneyland. And this is just a exact rendition of what that map is going to be like. Imagine if you had it at a Disneyland flyer. Here's 3D implementation. So the left is the block out, and then the one on the right. And this is still work in progress. This is very early work in progress, but that map is already coming together really fast. And then once all the props are done and gameplay's played it, then we do a lighting and a post-process pass. This is pretty important to make sure that our game feels polished. We spend a lot of time making sure that we make realistic spaces, but we want to be in a clean aesthetic so that it is a competitive shooter. So we want to make sure that everything is readable and make sure everything is clear. So we don't put too much fog. We don't put too much post-process. We want to make sure that the characters and the gameplay are number one. And then here's just some more lighting. Basically, we want to make sure that our maps have mood, but are not like a nighttime map per se, but that every space is readable and has enough light so that you can see all the players and gadgets. So this is one of our maps called Windward. Looks great. This is a screenshot from the Canals map. This one is just special for you guys because it's nowhere else. This is a map that Dan Brown's team is working on that looks awesome. It actually is part of the skyscraper map that Evan showed a little bit earlier. But this is an inside shot. And the lighting for this map just looks absolutely immaculate. It's awesome. And this is part of that clean. This is a screenshot I wanted to show you guys about a clean aesthetic. Now there's going to be a little bit more propping that's on the other hallway and stuff, but the idea is that it's very readable on where you're supposed to go. And here on the left is a screenshot with no post-process, which is just basically in the engine, what does it look like? And then on the right is a little bit of a cleanup pass. And this is still early whip, but it's just kind of an idea of what we're doing to make sure that things look pretty visceral. And then sometimes it doesn't need a lot. The one on the left is the same situation where it was just done basically with lighting in Unreal Engine, and then on the right it's just with a little bit of cleanup and making it a little bit more vibrant. And that's me. That's environment art. Woo! This is Diane.
So I work with a lot of different art departments, so I want to show a little bit of, the variety of disciplines and how, they add to our game. Because in high res and in Roco, gameplay is king. So that means, from how the art relates to the game, but also performance, which is my background. I came from tech art with a performance focus. So the core team has to work on, and care about that as well. Here is, and it all starts with concept. So even from concept, we care about how that relates to the game and the attitude and all the things that Evelyn and Gandhi talked about. And we want to show that through all the way to the end. Just in our characters, what they're doing, just intrigue, attitude, fun. And here's something from our effects team that I thought was really fun because they, where that Skyfall map that we keep, giving you sneak peeks of is on top of a big old Dubai city. And we were like, how are you gonna make that skybox? It's just not possible without modeling out every single building out there and making it cool free. I was like, that's not possible, you can't do it. But here it is. It looks amazing. I think it's kind of free. You got the shimmer of the water, the fog rolling in, the parallax of the buildings, and this is just an amazing backdrop to an amazing setting that our environment team has built. There's another one that our effects team has to do, right? Just anchoring down this cool canals map, giving a story, giving something cool to, effects just add so much flair to a map. But they can, if they just add a lot of particles, they can kill your FPS by themselves. So they found a way to give us that without hitting the whole map. Here's something that I love from the animation team. Our Dima character, just showing off how he loves his guns, he loves his jobs. And another huge accomplishment actually for our animation team is that this kind of game is new for high-res. And the shooter, UV4, a lot of new systems had to be developed. So they had to put together a whole movement system, a movement system, right? Dodging, rolling, running, shooting, mantling, and having it all blend together, tech art, making it all happen. And here's the concept that kind of anchored our team from the beginning. It's the one that inspired us, that got people excited for the longest time until we had, maps and, characters to play with. This is the one that we were like, this is what we're building, the feeling that this concept piece is going to give us, right? Just you as an agent flying into a really cool space and saving the day. And I think we did a pretty good job. This is where it is, like, that's not that map, but this is an in-game shot, right, of High Castle. And I think it's pretty impressive what we've done with it. Now, we're coming to, right, Switch, PlayStation, Xbox, wide range of PC specs. And we're also providing cross-platform, cross-play. And so with all of that, performance is a big part of that. It's, that 60 FPS, and no matter where you play, the same experience, visual and gameplay, is going to be key. So we had to make some tough choices, and one of them was like, we need to switch over to forward rendering. Here's where we were, beginning of this year, right? Some groans from our, developers. Memories. We can't even hit 30 FPS sitting in the lobby. And the lobby wasn't finished. And here's another one, looking at that windward map that we mentioned, right? 16 FPS, that's where we were. And you can see it wasn't finished either. So, one of the reasons why we went with forward rendering was just deferred rendering. It's good at rendering a lot of lights, dynamic lights at the same time, but that's not core to our game, right? We're about fast-paced, tight, tactical shooting. It's not about lights flashing in your eyes. So we made the choice to switch over, and this is what the team made, right? This is in-game 60 FPS forward rendering. I think it's a huge accomplishment. That's on the environment side. And the character side, right? We had to make choices too. Right? How do you push that visual without giving up on that performance? Where can we go? How far can we go? Where on that chart should we balance? And our tech art team put this together to kind of be like, okay, what can we deliver so that we don't look completely shitty? we're competitive with the other products in the market. So we decided, you know what, that 60 and that 80 looks pretty much the same. So we gave the character artist a budget of 60K. And then we started looking at some of our assets, and some of our assets, like this one, was a 40K hair. This is poly budget, and so we're like, that's a lot. That's actually, like, that's real performance impact. That's, if you look at her, if you play her, you're dropping FPS. So we had to go through a lot of iterations to try to figure out, how can we give you the same look without hitting your performance. And here's like, kind of behind the scenes of like us going iteration, trying to figure out a technique of how do we give you the same look. And we're measuring, if you look at this, down to the nanosecond for squeezing every little bit out of that rendering pipeline for you. Anyway, so all of this is to try to get you that awesome game. And to get you an awesome game, especially in a shooter, we need a great audio person. And for the first time, we have an audio director in high res, and it's so exciting.
I want to point out real quick for that sky and Skyfell, that's actually just an image, just a flat image.
Thanks, Diana, for that intro. Since we're a little short on time, so we're just going to do Q&A after, and I'm going to try to rush through the last section for audio. So I'm really excited to talk to you guys about the audio Roco today. And so here are some of the goals that we tried to achieve in our game. So the first one is visceral. We really wanted the sounds to be immersive to our players, and especially the guns. And because a shooter, guns are kind of important. And so we've come a long way from how the guns were sounding initially in the game to where they are sounding now. In the beginning, we had to use some more like just stock library gun sounds, and some of the feedback we got was like, oh, it kind of sounds like toy guns, can we just up the ante a little bit on that? And so I thought about it, and I'm like, oh, what better way to get that really visceral and immersive feel than to just record the guns in real life? And so I did some research, and I found this guy, Frank, and he lives, Frank, he's known as the Recordist, and he lives in the middle of nowhere in northern Idaho, and he was just like he had a perfect place to record guns, because like no one really lives there, and we had like over 20-some guns that we needed to record. And so there are a lot of logistics, like, some of them were banned in the US, and so finding someone who had access to those guns and who could actually shoot those guns in a safe way, like his armor was from the Navy, and so that was good, because, also you want to be alive after the session. And also, scheduling the time of the session is important, like, if it's in the summertime, then all the bugs come out, and then you get really noisy recordings, and it's just a pain to get all the bugs out of your gun sounds. And so anyway, long story short, I flew from Atlanta, there was no direct flight, and had to fly to Minneapolis, and then to Washington, and rent a car and drive 2 hours to the middle of nowhere in northern Idaho. And we got our guns recorded, and so here's a picture. So the top right is actually a rocket launcher, and that's actually what it was very interesting. He had his nephew kind of in the fields trying to catch the, to make sure there's no forest fire that got started from them, and so the rocket launchers are just like flying over his head. And we had over 10 or 12 mics set up, some really close, some midway from the gun, and some really far, so we get all the different perspectives of gun. And a lot of them were really heavy duty, like the 50 cal that I'm holding in the bottom left. I could barely hold it for that picture, but even if you're like 20 feet away, it felt like you were getting I felt like I was getting the air knocked out of me from there. But anyway, so we recorded these guns, and here's a little snippet of the session. And actually, there are cows over here, and so, yeah, he's very good, a pro. and the cows are just like, oh, it's like normal because I guess they just do that all the time over there. So yeah, that's a little snippet of what the session was like. And so we put them into the game. So here's an example of the before and after of what the guns used to sound like, using the stock sounds, and then what it sounded like after we edited the real recorded guns. That's the old one. That's the new. So you can hear how it does sound a lot more visceral and a lot more realistic and representative of the actual gun. So the second goal that we had for audio was to have it be stylized and fit like the cast and the characters of Rocco. So as you know, Evelyn was talking about some of the characters, they're really cool looking and they have attitude, but then they're still cool, they're still like calm and collected, and so the music that we had in the game is also kind of like representative of that, where it's not too try hard, but it still has an edge to it. Yeah, so it's older. So the UI sounds are also stylized in a way where we wanted kind of like a sci-fi element to it. In addition, sorry, I'm just doing the top of it. Yeah, so sci-fi mixed with realistic type feel for the UI sounds, and we actually this is called a Eurorack, and we hooked up all the different cables to do some rocket science to get that stylized UI sound for our sounds. And sorry, I have the third goal for audio. Okay, so the third goal for audio is that we wanted it to be informative. And so one of the big complaints in a lot of our games is that, oh my gosh, someone sneaked up on me and then I'm dead and I didn't hear the footsteps of the enemies, and the audio just sucks because of that. And so we really wanted to communicate to the player very clearly, okay, this is an enemy, and this is what they sound like, and this is what you sound like as yourself, and this is what allies sound like. And we found a good way to do that was through footsteps, and also the body movement, which is called Foley. And so, a lot of the enemies, we made them a lot heavier for the footsteps, and a lot more jingle to it, so that you can definitely hear that they're coming. And the opposite of that for allies, where it's like really light and really high pitch, and so it's very and there's no jingles to the movement, so that you know that I don't really care about allies if they're around. Well, yeah, you care, but you don't care as much, and yourself is somewhere in the middle. And so here's an audio clip to kind of demonstrate that. yeah, that's all I have for the audio section. So I'll pass it back to Duncan.
Cool.
That's gonna do it for us. We'll do
Super duper team.
Andrea and her team are like saints for having to listen to those kind of things over and over and over and over for 8 hours a day.
Also, don't forget to play the game. It's on the expo floor and sign up for Alpha.
Don't forget to like and subscribe.